There are moments in every relationship when the body stops reaching out. The hand that used to find yours in the dark stays still. The hug lingers less, the kiss feels like routine, and eventually silence moves into the space where touch used to live. And when that happens, it's easy to think it's just stress or business or time doing what time does. But here's the truth. When the body goes quiet, it's not the end of the conversation. It's the soul stepping forward, saying the things we've been too afraid to put into words. Sometimes that silence is pain that's never been acknowledged. Sometimes it's boundaries that were crossed and never repaired. And sometimes it's a heart that feels unseen, unheard, and unloved, trying to survive in the only way it knows how, by shutting down what once was natural. The body doesn't betray us. It just tells the truth we've tried to bury. Most people don't talk about what happens when intimacy fades, when one person pulls back and the other is left wondering what went wrong. It's a quiet ache that sits heavy in the room, even if no one names it out loud. You feel the distance in the way you pass each other in the hallway, in the way conversations get shorter, in the way the bed feels bigger at night. And underneath it all is the confusion. Is this about me, about them, or about something we can't quite put into words? That's the weight so many carry in silence, trying to hold the relationship together while secretly questioning their own worth. This is where abstinence, chosen or unspoken, isn't just about the body. It's about the soul. When the body goes quiet, it's rarely without reason. It's the soul's way of speaking truths we've ignored for too long, and learning to hear that is where healing begins. The silence of touch reveals the silence of trust. You can feel it before you can name it. The hugs that once felt natural start to feel hesitant. The hand that used to reach for yours doesn't anymore. And when you sit close, it's not closeness you feel, it's distance. That silence in the body is not random. It's not just a phase or the effect of stress. It's the body showing you where trust has been broken, even if no one has spoken a word. Because when trust is steady, touch flows easily. It's not something you have to force. It's not something you have to ask for every time. It just happens. But when trust has cracks in it, the body notices first. It pulls back as a kind of protection, even if the mind is still trying to convince itself everything is fine. That's the hard part. Our bodies don't lie. They carry the truth of what's really happening underneath the surface. When someone feels betrayed, when they feel dismissed, when they feel unsafe emotionally, their body responds. It closes off even if their mouth is saying, "I'm fine." The same is true for the other side. When you've been hurt, when you've been criticized, when you feel unwanted, it's almost impossible to lean into touch with the same openness as before. It's not that you don't care. It's that your body is holding on to a story of being unprotected. And until that trust is rebuilt, touch becomes the first thing to go quiet. This is why so many couples find themselves confused. One person is asking for physical connection, thinking that will fix the problem, while the other person is silently saying, "I can't give you my body when I don't feel safe with my heart." And that's where the cycle starts. The one who feels rejected presses harder. The one who feels unsafe retreats further. Both feel unseen, and neither feels understood. It's not that intimacy doesn't matter. It's that intimacy cannot survive without trust. Touch without trust feels hollow. And over time, that hollowness turns into resentment. The way through isn't by demanding the body to show up again. It's by repairing the silence underneath it. Asking hard but honest questions. Where did the trust break down? What conversations have been left unfinished? What pain has been brushed aside instead of healed? When you take the time to answer those questions with honesty and humility, the body starts to soften again. Because it finally feels safe to. Touch doesn't come back because you begged for it. It comes back because trust returned. If you're in that place right now, where the silence of touch feels louder than words, hear this. It doesn't mean love is gone. It means there's something important that's been waiting to be addressed. The absence of touch is not the end of the story. It's the invitation to start telling the truth. And when trust is cared for, the body doesn't stay silent. It leans back in naturally without being asked. That's the difference between forcing connection and living in it. When words fail, the body carries the truth. You know this because you've felt it. A conversation might sound calm on the outside, but inside your chest is tight. You're nodding, but your stomach is in knots. You say, "I'm okay." But your tone, your posture, your silence, those are saying something entirely different. The body doesn't lie. It tells the truth we often don't want to admit out loud. And in relationships, that unspoken truth can be louder than anything actually said. Think about the moments when conflict goes unresolved. Maybe you've had the same argument over and over. You've explained your side, they've explained theirs, but nothing changes. So you stop explaining, you stop repeating yourself. On the surface, it looks like peace. But inside, your body is still carrying the weight of disappointment and hurt. That's why your arms cross when they come close. That's why you hesitate before leaning in. That's why your body feels heavy around them, even if you're smiling and saying it's fine. The words stop, but the truth doesn't disappear. It shifts into your body. And it works the other way too. When you've hurt someone, you can feel it in how they move around you. The pause before they answer. The stiffness when you touch them. The way they give you space, not out of respect, but out of distance. They may not say they're upset. They may not want to fight, but their body is carrying the story their words won't tell. That's why it's dangerous to only listen to what's being said. If you miss what the body is showing, you'll miss the reality of what's going on. This is where so many couples get lost. One person insists, I told you everything is fine, but the other person can feel the tension. And instead of naming it, they start questioning themselves. They think, maybe I'm imagining this. Maybe I'm asking for too much. But no, you're not imagining it. You're picking up on the body's truth. Silence in words doesn't erase the presence of pain. The body is simply carrying what hasn't been spoken. What this means is that healing doesn't come from repeating the same words louder. Healing comes from creating safety for the truth to come out. That means listening past the words. Paying attention to tone, to silence, to the way someone's body shifts in the middle of a conversation. And then gently saying, I can feel there's more here. I want to hear it. That's how trust gets rebuilt, by honoring the body's honesty instead of ignoring it. If you've been in that place where the body is heavy with unspoken truth, don't shame yourself for it. It doesn't mean you're weak or broken. It means your body is trying to protect you, to carry what your voice couldn't yet release. And if you've been on the other side, watching someone's body carry that silence, don't rush them. Don't demand words before they're ready. Show them you're safe enough to handle the truth when it comes. Because when the body finally feels heard, the words eventually follow, and that's where real connection begins again. Unspoken hurt turns affection into absence. You can feel this shift long before you can explain it. The kiss that used to linger becomes a quick brush. The playful touch disappears. The warmth in their eyes feels cooler, like a light has dimmed. Nothing was announced, nothing was declared, but something has changed. That's what happens when hurt goes unspoken. It doesn't vanish just because we keep quiet. It settles into the body and quietly rewrites how love is expressed. Most people think silence avoids conflict. They believe holding it in is keeping the peace. But silence is not peace, it's just a pause. And during that pause, the hurt keeps growing roots. Maybe you were criticized in a way that cut deeper than they realized. Maybe you felt dismissed or unseen or taken for granted. Instead of saying it, you tucked it away. And over time, that tucked away hurt starts to shape how you show up. The affection that once felt natural now feels forced. The presence that once felt safe now feels guarded. It's not that the love is gone, it's that the hurt has quietly taken its place. This is why couples so often find themselves confused. One person feels a lack of affection and asks for more. The other feels weighed down by unspoken hurt and withdraws further. Both think the other is the problem, but the real issue is the silence. When hurt isn't acknowledged, it becomes a wall between you, even if you're sitting side by side. The body follows the heart, and if the heart is carrying resentment, the body cannot give freely. Unspoken hurt is also dangerous because it doesn't stay small. What begins as a small wound, an insensitive comment, a broken promise, a forgotten need, becomes a bigger absence over time. The less it's talked about, the more it shapes how you think and feel, and eventually it reshapes how you touch, how you speak, and how you love. Affection starts to feel like a risk instead of a gift. Reaching out feels unsafe when the hurt hasn't been seen. The way through is honesty, but not the kind of honesty that comes out sharp or defensive. It's the honesty that sounds like, that moment hurt me more than I wanted to admit, or I've been carrying something I need to share with you. That kind of truth clears the space where silence has been living, and when the silence breaks, affection has room to return, because affection doesn't thrive in the dark. It thrives in the light of being known. If you're the one holding on an unspoken hurt, your body is already showing it. The absence of affection is your signal. Not a signal that you don't care anymore, but a signal that something inside you needs attention. And if you're noticing your partner's affection fade, the response isn't to demand it back, it's to get curious about what pain might be standing in the way. When hurt is finally named and cared for, affection no longer feels like a task. It flows again freely because the weight has been lifted. What felt absent begins to return not because you forced it, but because the silence is no longer in control. The body shuts down where respect is missing. You may not always notice it at first, but it shows itself in subtle ways. The way someone stops leaning in, the way laughter feels forced instead of natural, the way intimacy becomes less frequent, not because of lack of attraction, but because something deeper has gone quiet. When respect is eroded through criticism, dismissal, or careless words, the body starts protecting itself. It closes off, not out of spite, but out of survival. Because without respect, the most natural parts of connection no longer feel safe. Respect is the foundation that every form of closeness is built on. You can't separate the two. When someone feels respected, their body feels free to rest, to soften, to reach out. But when they feel disrespected, even in small, consistent ways, the body takes note. It remembers the sting of sarcasm, the weight of being belittled, the achy of not being valued. And even if the mind tries to push past it, the body won't forget. That's why affection starts to feel forced. That's why intimacy starts to disappear. The body is simply responding to the absence of respect. This is where so many couples get stuck. One person keeps asking for closeness, wondering why it's not being given. The other feels the unspoken wound of disrespect, even if they haven't fully put it into words. And instead of saying, "I need to feel respected before I can open up again," they go silent, they retreat. The touch becomes minimal, the eye contact fades, the conversations grow shorter. The absence of respect has now turned into the absence of connection. Respect doesn't just show up in the big moments, it shows up in the dailiness of a relationship. It's in how you listen when the other person is speaking. It's in how you respond when they share something vulnerable. It's in whether you value their boundaries, their time, their perspective. And it's in the way you handle disagreements. Disrespect doesn't always come as shouting or harshness. Often it's rolled eyes. It's dismissive tones. It's ignoring what matters to them because it doesn't matter to you. These small cracks slowly widen until the whole foundation feels shaky. If you felt your body shut down in a relationship, it's not because you're broken or incapable of love. It's because your soul knows what it needs and it refuses to give away what doesn't feel protected. Your silence, your distance, your hesitancy, it's your body's way of asking for respect. And if you're on the other side noticing that shutdown, the answer isn't to push harder for affection. The answer is to rebuild respect, to take accountability for the ways you may have hurt without realizing it, to speak words that restore dignity instead of chip away at it, to listen with presence instead of rushing to defend yourself. When respect returns, the body doesn't have to guard itself anymore. It can open up again. It can laugh freely, touch naturally, connect without fear, because the body doesn't need to protect what already feels safe. That's the quiet power of respect. It makes love sustainable because it gives the body permission to stay. When connection breaks, intimacy follows. You don't lose the physical closeness first. You lose the emotional one. The long talks that used to stretch late into the night turn into quick check-ins. The curiosity that once made you lean into each other is replaced with assumptions. The laughter fades, not because there's nothing to laugh about, but because you no longer feel like you're in sync. And when that connection weakens, the body feels it. Intimacy doesn't disappear out of nowhere. It's the symptom of something deeper, a sign that the emotional bridge between you has started to crack. So often in relationships, we mistake the absence of intimacy for the problem itself. We say, "We're not as close as we used to be," and point to the lack of touch, the lack of physical affection, the lack of passion. But those are only surface-level indicators. The real problem is the disconnection underneath. When someone doesn't feel seen, heard, or valued, their body will eventually stop reaching out. Intimacy is not just physical, it's emotional trust expressed through the body. Without connection, intimacy can't survive. This is why it feels so frustrating when one partner tries to fix things by focusing only on the physical side. They want more touch, more affection, more intimacy, but they skip over the part where the connection actually broke, and the other person, instead of explaining, withdraws even further. Not because they don't care, but because intimacy without connection feels empty. It feels like giving a piece of yourself without knowing if it will be cared for. And no one can sustain that for long. Connection breaks in quiet, ordinary ways. It breaks when conversations stay surface level and never go deeper. It breaks when one person doesn't feel listened to, or when their needs are minimized. It breaks when apologies are avoided, or when effort feels one-sided. None of these moments alone destroy intimacy, but together, they chip away at the foundation until there's not enough trust left to carry it. The body simply reflects what the heart already knows. Without connection, intimacy feels unsafe. The way forward isn't to push for more closeness on the outside. It's to rebuild the bridge on the inside. That starts with slowing down enough to notice where the disconnection lies, asking questions with real curiosity. Listening without planning your defense. Owning the moments where you've pulled away or failed to show up. Connection doesn't come back with one big gesture. It comes back through small, consistent choices to see each other again. And when connection begins to heal, intimacy follows naturally. You don't have to force it. The body will always move towards safety when it feels safe again. If you're in that place where intimacy feels like it's slipping away, don't panic. See it for what it is, a signal, not a death sentence. The absence of closeness is your relationship's way of saying, we need to reconnect here. And when that reconnection happens, the touch, the laughter, the spark, they return. Not because you chased them, but because you repaired what they were built on. Connection first, intimacy after. That's how love lasts. Healing begins where silence is faced. Silence in a relationship doesn't always look like no words being spoken. Sometimes conversations are happening, but the real issues never make it to the table. You talk about schedules, bills, the kids, what's for dinner, but you don't talk about the disappointment that lingers, or the resentment that's been building, or the loneliness you feel sitting next to someone you love. That silence feels safer in the moment, but over time it becomes the heaviest thing in the room. And until it's faced, nothing truly heals. The danger of silence is that it fools us. It makes us think avoiding the hard topics is protecting the relationship, when really it's starving it. You hold back because you don't want to start an argument, or you convince yourself it's not worth bringing up, or you're afraid of being dismissed. But silence never erases the hurt. It only buries it. And what we bury eventually shows up in other ways, in shorter tempers, in colder touch, in distance that neither of you can quite explain. The relationship begins to wither, not from lack of love, but from lack of honesty. Facing silence doesn't mean unloading everything all at once. It means daring to name what's real. It's saying, I've been holding this inside, and it's been building a wall between us. It's admitting that pretending everything is fine hasn't worked. That kind of truth takes courage, but it's the only doorway to healing, because unspoken pain can't be repaired, only repeated. The longer it stays in the dark, the more power it has. But the moment it's named, the moment it's spoken out loud, the grip it has on you both starts to loosen. And it's not just about speaking the silence, it's about how you listen when it's spoken. Healing begins when silence is faced together, with one person opening up and the other choosing to hear without judgment. Not to fix, not to defend, not to explain, but simply to receive. That's what makes the silence safe to break. That's what tells the other person, your truth won't push me away. And when both people begin to trust that the walls that silence built slowly come down, if you've been carrying something unspoken, you already know the cost. You feel it in the way your chest tightens when they walk in the room. You feel it in the way affection feels harder to give. You feel it in the exhaustion of keeping it inside. Facing that silence may feel risky, but the greater risk is never facing it at all, because silence left unbroken doesn't stay still, it grows. And if you've been on the other side, noticing the distance but unsure why, your role is to make space for the truth when it comes, to show with your presence that the silence won't scare you off. Healing doesn't come from avoiding conflict. It doesn't come from pretending. It comes from walking straight into the silence and facing what's been hiding there. And when you do, something shifts. The weight lightens, the distance shrinks, and the body that once pulled away begins to lean back in. Because the soul finally feels heard, and once it does, healing has a place to begin.